If you're a parent who's trying to get stronger, move a bit better, and just genuinely feel and look more athletic, then it can be a very confusing world because there's so much conflicting advice out there on social media. What I'm going to do for you in this video is break down the 5 key things that the strongest parents in my Athletic Parent Project coaching program are doing each week. So without further ado, let's dive into this. So the first thing I want to do is actually address what is strength. Now, if you go on social media, you're almost certain to find some sort of fitness coach talking about building muscle, and that is the common norm. And that is great. Building muscle does help develop strength, but they are not quite the same thing. Strength is our ability to produce force, and it's typically trained at slightly lower rep ranges. So 3 to 6 reps is a norm. More experienced lifters like powerlifters might go into the 1, 2 or 3 rep range, but typically 3 to 6 reps is going to allow us to get a good weight on our lifts to stimulate strength adaptations. Building muscle has historically been done at a slightly higher rep range of 6 to 12 reps. This is being challenged by the research at the moment, and that is a subject for a whole nother video, and the way that people are presenting this information online, which isn't actually factually correct. But I just want to clear up that what we're talking about here is your ability to move and move forcefully, which is important in everyday life, especially as a parent. Now, the reason that that is an important difference to make is because we are going to target a slightly different adaptation. So we're going to be primarily targeting neural adaptations with these lower rep, heavier lifts. So coming on to tip number 1. So first thing to think about is spreading your volume across a week. So we've got to stop annihilating these body parts once a week. The historical way of doing this is to train one muscle group or 1 or 2 muscle groups in one session, do a high amount of volume, high amount of reps and sets on those muscle groups, be very sore for 4 or 5 days after that session, then come back in a week's time to do the same thing again. But as a parent, you're not a 20-year-old influencer who's got recovery time on tap. So we have to train a little bit smarter and use smarter training splits. Now, most parents that I work with, the reality is they've only got time for 2 or 3 sessions in the gym. So if we just focused on 1 or 2 muscle groups in those sessions, it'd be a very inefficient way of training. And also the research has shown us that it isn't necessary to go to those high volumes for one muscle group in a session. Now, I like to program through movements as well as muscles, and I'll show you how I do that on the next point. But what we can do is hit all our key movements 2 to 3 times a week and our key muscle groups 2 to 3 times a week, and get all the adaptation that we need without having to have the excessive fatigue on those muscle groups. So make sure that we're spreading that volume across our sessions and not going super high on the volume in just one session. Now, tip number 2 is to anchor your sessions to your main lifts. So heavy lifts build strength. That is the simple fact of it. And this is where programming through movements is going to help, because we can pick 2 key movements per session. So these are stuff like our squats, hinges, our upper body pushes and pulls. And we're going to hit 2 of those as our main lifts through our sessions. We will still have assistance lifts that might be done at slightly lighter loads and slightly higher rep ranges. And this is going to help with, this could be specific injury rehab work that we're doing. It could be muscle building, so muscle hypertrophy on specific muscle groups, or it could just be some supporting movements that are going to help either key movements through activities that we do in day to day or a sport that we play. This way we're keeping our sessions effective and time efficient. Most parents will often waste a lot of their time just chasing fatigue, and it's, again, going back to that idea of being efficient, it's a very inefficient way of training. Also, we want to be able to show up in day-to-day life for our kids. If we're knackered from the gym all the time, that isn't going to work. And if you've only got 2 to 3 sessions per week in the gym, then you need to make those sessions count. So using these key lifts as our anchors and building our session around them to then have 4 or 5 exercises after those key lifts helps us get in the gym, get our work done heavy, get in, get out, and then be super efficient. So start with intent, finish with purpose, and don't let the main stuff get lost in the fluff. And that brings us on to tip number 3, which is train your core properly. This is something that's really important for parents. A lot of people will just simply say, oh, well, squats and deadlifts, they're enough. Our main compound lifts will work our core. They will to an extent, but only in a certain way. And I want you to think about this saying, you can't fire a cannon from a canoe. If our core is unstable or weak, then our other movements like our heavy squats and deadlifts are going to be compromised because of that. There's also, from a parent point of view, the added factor that, we're going to be carrying kids around for a lot of the time. We're going to be playing with our kids. And a lot of parents do end up suffering from back pain because of this. So having a strong core is going to help reduce our day-to-day stiffness, it's going to improve our movement around the midriff of our body, and it's going to make our other strength work a lot more efficient. And you need to consider the core as a group of 360-degree muscle group and not just simply the abdominals. Because while the abs are an important part, and yes, everybody likes to look good and have their six-pack, that is just one part of it. And the core's function is so much more than that. We've got a lot of different movements, that we can do with our core, and it's important that we train them. Stuff like rotation movements, anti-extension and flexion movements, anti-rotation, as well as the traditional spinal flexion and extension. So direct core work can help reduce that stiffness, improve our lifting technique, make our posture a little bit better in day-to-day movements that we're doing. And we need to train it like any other muscle group. We need to apply load to it, not just doing high rep sit-ups or planks for minutes on end. So make sure that you're effectively targeting this muscle group the same way that you would any other. I like to put 2 or 3 core exercises throughout the week, and that'll be a different movement. So it might be on the first day, we might have a bracing exercise. On the second day, it might be a rotation. And on the third, it might be something like a loaded carry. And that brings us on to tip number 4, which is don't marry yourself to one piece of kit. Now this is a debate that always goes on Instagram in particular. Certain coaches have their favourite pieces of kit. You'll get some coaches who absolutely swear by machines being the way to do everything because they're nice and stable, allow you to target muscle groups. These tend to be the sort of science-based lifters, if you like. You've then also got the people who are traditionalists that absolutely swear by barbell lifts and are obsessed with squats, deadlifts and bench press. What I want you to think about is the fact that the gym is our toolbox, and everything in that toolbox has its use at a certain time or a certain place. Depending on what your goal is, depending on your body type, your injury history, your fatigue state, the goal that you're working towards, all of these pieces of kit have use for us. Dumbbells, barbells, cables, machines, they can all be used to move towards our goals, and they all have value. Now, as a parent, one thing I like to advise is sometimes consider picking joint-friendly, sustainable exercises. So if you know you've got a shoulder niggle, probably a barbell bench press is not the best idea. It might be that we go to a dumbbell bench press, because then whereas a barbell will force us through one range or path of motion, a dumbbell gives us a little bit more freedom. A chest press machine equally might offer a little bit more stability and put a little bit less strain on the shoulder. So that's just something to consider as well. So don't fall into this social media influencer dogma or this barbell elitism. The goal is long-term progression where we can use all of these tools, not loyalty to one single tool. And then tip number 5, recovery is where strength happens. We can blast ourselves in the gym, but whatever we do in the gym, we have to recover from. And unless we do that, we will not progress at a good rate. That's when we can then start to lead to niggling injuries that can turn into overuse injuries. And it can also be then when we get into more serious states of fatigue, which in the long term lead to overtraining. If you hear someone say they've overtrained for a week, they probably haven't overtrained. Overtraining is a long-term chronic condition that comes when you fail to recover properly from training over several months. So it's really important that we get this right. Ditch the cut and bulk cycles, okay? Stop eating constantly in a calorie deficit to lose weight, and equally stop doing the dirty bulks. Get a sustainable diet that you can tweak with little increases in calories or macronutrients that allow you to eat to train well. Because we want to enjoy our life, we want to eat with our kids, equally we want to achieve our performance and body goals, so we need to have that routine that's going to help us do that. We also have to accept that sleep disruption is going to be a part of the parenting training cycle. And we like to use the red, amber, green in the Athletic Parent Project to adjust training on a day-to-day basis based on this. So if you have maybe been a little bit ill or you haven't had much sleep and you turn up to the gym and you're like, I am a red, I can't fulfill this session the way it is programmed, that session has to change. It has to become a recovery session. You might do a little bit light cardio, some mobility work. You might even just have a rest day. Amber is where we're just feeling a bit tired, but we could still complete the session. but something just needs to be reduced slightly. It could be that we reduce the weight slightly, or my preference is to reduce the volume, of that exercise. So we take the reps down a little bit. Green, obviously we're gonna do the session as planned. Now, a big thing here, keep moving on your off days. I think this is something that a lot of parents could do a bit of a better job of doing, is actually making sure we get around and move on our off days. Take the kids out, go to the park, take them for a walk, get those steps in. 10,000 steps is by no means this magic bullet that is gonna help with everything, but it is actually a very good target to hit. Because if you're hitting 10,000 steps a day, you are a good active person. So make sure we get out on our off days, do some mobility work as well, make sure we're moving, because motion is lotion. So make sure you remember that recovery isn't lazy. It's what helps you show up at the gym next time, ready to train and perform over weeks and months. That accumulation of training is then going to lead to real good long-term gains. So stop thinking in these 30-day cycles and start thinking about the bigger picture over time. So hopefully those 5 tips are going to be really useful for you. If you're interested in implementing these in your training but feel like you need help, then just find my Instagram page in the link below this video. DM me the word parent on Instagram, and I'll send you all the details of how the Athletic Parent Project works, and we'll get you training, fueling and recovery in a way that is sustainable and really suitable for parents. Thanks for your time, thanks for watching this video. Make sure you hit subscribe, and hopefully see you on the next.